December 1944. High above the freezing skies of war-torn Europe, a lone American B-17 Flying Fortress was desperately fighting to stay in the air. Returning from a deadly bombing mission deep inside Germany, the aircraft was completely decimated. 3 of its engines were dead, its tail section was shredded, and sub-zero Arctic winds blasted through massive shell holes in the fuselage. Inside, 9 bleeding American soldiers, under the command of 21-year-old Lieutenant Charlie Brown, were trapped in a flying coffin, losing altitude every second over hostile territory. Suddenly, a shadow swooped in from the clouds. It was a German Messerschmitt fighter, piloted by Franz Stigler, a legendary Luftwaffe ace with 27 confirmed aerial victories. Stigler had his guns locked onto the helpless American bomber. He was just 1 kill away from earning Germany's highest military award, the Knight's Cross. All it took was a single tap on the trigger to turn the bomber into a fireball. Stigler pulled up right alongside the shattered aircraft and looked directly into the cockpit. Through the twisted metal and frost, he didn't see enemy combatants. He saw terrified, badly wounded young boys holding on to each other for dear life. What happened next became one of the most astonishing secrets of World War II. Instead of opening fire, the German ace did the unthinkable. He saluted the young American pilot, shielded the dying bomber with his own plane from German anti-aircraft guns, and guided them straight toward the sector held by General George S. Patton's victorious Third Army. This is the incredible story of how a German ace saved 9 of Patton's men, why General Patton made a masterstroke decision to classify the incident, and how 2 war enemies became brothers for life 50 years later. Before we dive into Patton's reaction, tell me in the comments below, if you were in that cockpit, would you have followed direct military orders or listened to your own conscience? To understand the raw emotion of that day, you have to look inside the freezing cockpit of Olde Pub. Sub-zero winds blasted through shattered metal. 21-year-old Lieutenant Charlie Brown was coughing up blood, desperately gripping the ice-coated controls with hands that were rapidly going numb. His tail gunner was dead. His radio operator was severely wounded, and the altitude oxygen tanks were completely blown to pieces. Charlie Brown himself had briefly lost consciousness from a lack of oxygen, waking up just seconds before the massive B-17 crashed into the frozen German treetops. He pulled the heavy control yoke back with all his remaining strength, barely keeping the crippled warbird airborne. Through the broken side window, Brown suddenly saw the terrifying silver wings of a Messerschmitt Bf-109, so close he could see the rivets. His heart stopped. He waited for the cannon shells to tear them apart. Inside the German fighter, Franz Stigler's hand rested on the firing trigger. But as he looked into the American cockpit, he froze. He didn't see an enemy war machine. He saw terrified, bleeding boys clinging to each other in absolute horror. In that split second, Stigler remembered the iron rule of his legendary commander, Gustav Rödel, who once barked, "If I ever see or hear of you shooting a man in a parachute, I will shoot you down myself. You fight by rules of honor to keep your soul, not for medals." To Franz Stigler, firing cannon rounds into this defenseless, bleeding American crew was no different than executing soldiers hanging from parachutes. Stigler pulled his fighter right onto the B-17's wingtip, made eye contact with Charlie Brown, and pointed down, shouting over the roar of the engines, "Land in Sweden, or surrender! You won't survive!" Charlie Brown, teeth clenched through the pain, shook his head and yelled back, "We're making it home!" Stigler stared at the young American in awe. Instead of pulling his trigger, The German ace did the unthinkable. He locked his fighter into formation right beside the B-17, using his own German wings as a human shield against the deadly anti-aircraft batteries on the ground, escorting the dying bomber all the way to the open sea. Against every physical law of aviation, Charlie Brown crash-landed the shredded B-17 on a forward airfield controlled by General George S. Patton's Third Army. Medics and intelligence officers swarmed the bloody plane. The ground crew was immobilized with shock. The bomber was held together by little more than control cables and structural wires, its interior completely drenched in ice and blood. Within hours, Lieutenant Charlie Brown was standing inside a dimly lit command trailer, face to face with General George S. Patton, Jr. himself. Patton stood over the battlefield map, his ivory-handled revolvers resting at his hip. He listened in silence as Brown detailed how a German fighter had escorted them to safety. Patton looked Brown dead in the eye, his voice low and raspy. "Son, are you telling me a German ace let you live and escorted you out of hell?" "Yes, General," Brown replied, his voice trembling. "He saved my crew." Patton walked over to the window, looking out at the freezing mud where his Third Army was locked in the brutal, relentless battle of the Bulge. A faint, respectful smile crossed the old general's face. "By God, Lieutenant," Patton whispered, "that man is a true warrior. After this damn war is over, I'd shake his hand myself." Then Patton turned around, his eyes turning back into cold steel. "But listen to me very carefully," Patton commanded, leaning over the table. "My boys are fighting and dying in the snow right now. If word gets out that the enemy has mercy, my troops will hesitate before pulling the trigger, and hesitation gets men killed. This report is classified top secret. Not a word to anyone. When we win this war, we'll tell the world." Patton personally shook Charlie Brown's hand, honoring his bravery, and locked the file away in the high-level Army archives. Tragically, just months after defeating Nazi Germany, General Patton passed away in December 1945 following a tragic car accident. His secret file remained buried deep in high-level Army archives, a sleeping monument to chivalry. For 45 long years, Charlie Brown carried Patton's secret deep in his heart. Every single night, when he closed his eyes, he was back in that freezing cockpit, looking through the broken glass at the face of the unknown German pilot who chose honor over slaughter. He never knew the man's name, or if he survived the brutal war. In 1989, with the Cold War ending and archives opening up, Charlie Brown decided he couldn't take the secret to his grave. He placed a notice in an international military aviation newsletter, searching for the man who saved a shattered B-17 on December 22, 1943. Thousands of miles away in Vancouver, Canada, a retired German businessman opened that exact magazine. It was Franz Stigler. After the war, Stigler had quietly migrated to Canada, keeping the secret hidden for decades out of respect for military classification laws. When Stigler saw the notice, his hands began to shake violently. On January 18, 1990, Charlie Brown's telephone rang in his Florida home. Brown picked up. "Hello?" A heavy German voice answered on the line, trembling with deep emotion. "Charlie, I was the pilot." Stigler began describing the exact details of the crippled bomber, the shattered tail, the frozen crew, and the direction he guided them. Charlie Brown broke down in tears. He had finally found his savior. Months later, the two aging veterans met in a hotel lobby for the very first time. As they walked toward each other, 45 years of war, secrets, and national borders completely melted away. They fell into a tight embrace, weeping uncontrollably in front of their families. Franz Stigler pulled back, tears streaming down his face, and said, "I loved you, Charlie. You were the brother I lost in the war." From that day until their deaths in 2008, passing away just months apart, Franz Stigler and Charlie Brown became inseparable best friends, fulfilling the legacy of honor that General Patton had so carefully protected decades earlier. The story of Charlie Brown and Franz Stigler is proof that true chivalry can exist even in the darkest corners of human history. General Patton's masterstroke decision protected his army's fighting spirit during the war, while ensuring that this incredible act of mercy was safely preserved for the world to discover. Patton proved that a great commander knows when to demand ruthless strength and when to respect true honor. What do you think of General Patton's reaction? Would you have kept the secret to protect your men on the front lines? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button for General Patton and these brave legends. Subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next episode.
Thanks for watching, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next story.